Little Red Riding Hood, a tale of Brothers Grimm. Once upon a time there was a dear little girl who was loved by everyone who looked at her, but most of all by her grandmother, and there was nothing she would not have given the child. Once she gave her a little cap of red velvet, which suited her so well she would never wear anything else, and so she was always called Little Red Riding Hood. One day her mother said to her, "Come, Little Red Riding Hood, here is a piece of cake and a bottle of wine. Take them to your grandmother. She is ill and weak, and they will do her good. Set out before it gets hot, and when you are going, walk nicely and quietly, and do not run off the path, or you may fall and break the bottle, and then your grandmother will get nothing. And when you go into her room, don't you forget to say good morning, and don't peep into every corner before you do it." "I will take great care," said Little Red Riding Hood to her mother, and gave her hand on it. The grandmother lived out in the wood, half a league from the village, and just as Little Red Riding Hood entered the wood, a wolf met her. Red Riding Hood did not know what a wicked creature he was, and was not at all afraid of him. "Good day, Little Red Riding Hood," said he. "Thank you kindly, wolf." "Whither away so early, Little Red Riding Hood?" "To my grandmother's." "What have you got in your apron?" "Cake and wine. Yesterday was baking day, so poor sick grandmother's to have something good and make her stronger." "And where does your grandmother live, Little Red Riding Hood?" "A good quarter of a league further on in the wood. Her house stands under the 3 large oak trees. The nut trees are just below. Surely you must know it," said Little Red Riding Hood. And the wolf thought to himself, "What a tender young creature! What a nice plump mouthful! She'll be better to eat than the old woman. But I must act craftily so as to catch both of them." And so he walked for a short time by the side of Little Red Riding Hood and said, "See, Little Red Riding Hood, how pretty the flowers are about here. Why do you not look round? I believe you do not hear how sweetly the little birds are singing. You walk gravely along as if you were going to school, while everything else out here in the wood is merry." Little Red Riding Hood raised her eyes, and when she saw the sunbeams dancing here and there through the trees, and pretty flowers growing everywhere, she thought, "Suppose I take grandmother a fresh nosegay. That would please her too. It is early in the day, and I shall still get there in good time." And so she ran from the path into the wood to look for flowers. Whenever she picked one, she fancied she saw a still prettier one further on, and ran after it, and so got deeper and deeper and deeper into the wood. Meanwhile, the wolf ran straight to the grandmother's house and knocked at the door. "Who is there?" "Little Red Riding Hood," said the wolf. "She's bringing cake and wine. Open the door." "Lift the latch," called out grandmother. "I am too weak and cannot get up." Well, the wolf lifted the latch. The door flew open. Without saying a word, he went straight to the grandmother's bed and devoured her. Then he put on her clothes, dressed himself in her cap, and laid himself in bed and drew the curtains. Little Red Riding Hood, however, had been running about picking flowers, and when she gathered so many she could carry no more, she remembered her grandmother and set out on the way to find her. She was surprised to find the cottage door standing open, and when she went into the room she had such a strange feeling she said to herself, "Oh dear, how uneasy I feel today. Other times I like being with grandmother so much." And she called out, "Good morning," but received no answer. And she went to the bed and drew back the curtains, and there lay her grandmother with a cap pulled far over her face, looking quite strange. "Oh, grandmother," she said, "what big ears you have." "The better to hear you with, my child," was the reply. "But, grandmother, what big eyes you have," she said. "The better to see you with, my dear." "But, grandmother, what large hands you have." "The better to hug you with." "Oh, but, grandmother, what a terrible big mouth you have." "The better to eat you with." And scarcely had the wolf said this than with a bound he was out of the bed and had swallowed up Red Riding Hood. When the wolf had appeased his appetite, he lay down again in the bed, fell asleep, and began to snore quite loudly. The huntsman was just passing the house and said to himself, "How the old woman is snoring. I must see if she needs anything." And he went into the room, and when he came to the bed he saw the wolf was lying in it. "And I found thee here, old sinner," he cried. "I have long sought thee." Just as he was going to fire at him, it occurred to him that the wolf may have devoured the grandmother, and that she might still be saved. So he did not fire, but took a pair of scissors and began to cut open the stomach of the sleeping wolf. When he'd made 2 snips, he saw Little Red Riding Hood shining, and he made 2 snips more, and the little girl sprang out, crying, "How frightened I have been! How dark it was inside!" And after that the aged grandmother came out alive also, but scarcely able to breathe. Red Riding Hood, however, quickly fetched great stones with which they filled the wolf's body, and when he awoke he wanted to run away, but the stones were so heavy he fell down at once and fell dead. And all 3 were delighted. The huntsman drew off the wolf's skin and went home with it. The grandmother ate cake and drank wine which Red Riding Hood had brought, and revived. But Red Riding Hood thought to herself, "And as long as I live, I will never by myself leave the path to run to the wood, when my mother has forbidden me to do so." It is also related that when Red Riding Hood was again taking cakes to the old grandmother, another wolf spoke to her and tried to entice her from the path. Red Riding Hood, however, was on her guard and went straight forward on her way, and told her grandmother that she had met the wolf and that he had said good morning to her, but with such a wicked look in his eyes that if they had not been on the public road, she was certain he would have eaten her up. "Well," said the grandmother, "we will shut the door that he may not come in." And soon afterward the wolf knocked and cried, "Open the door, grandmother, I am Little Red Riding Hood, and am fetching you some cakes." But they did not speak or open the door, and so the greybeard stole twice or thrice around the house, and at last jumped on the roof, intending to wait until Red Riding Hood went home in the evening, to steal after her and devour her in the darkness. But the grandmother saw what was in his thoughts, and in front of the house was a great stone trough, and she said to the child, "Take the pail, Red Riding Hood, I made sausages yesterday, carry the water in which I boiled them to the trough." Red Riding Hood carried until the great trough was quite full. Then the smell of the sausages reached the wolf, and he sniffed and peeped down, and at last stretched his neck so far he could no longer keep his footing, and began to slip down the roof straight into the trough, and was drowned. But Red Riding Hood went joyously home, and never did anything to harm anyone. The end.